Hi guys, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
Doing great. So to start, Daniel, I wanted to start with you. I know Karl Lagerfeld's legacy now is very different than it was when the show kind of begins. And so for you, what was your research process like finding out the aspects of Karl that like aren't necessarily the most well-known bits and pieces that people know about him?
Yeah, that was so interesting and fascinating, and I did not know that much about his earlier days either. Um, but fortunately, I mean, he was such a master in promoting himself. Even back then, when he was a young man, it was easy to find interviews and stuff about him. So I did all that. I looked at pictures and documentaries and whatnot. I read three different books. The Beautiful Fall was the probably the most important read because it gives you also an idea of Karl Lagerfeld, but also the environment and all the others in that fashion bubble in the 1970s in Paris. And then comes the day when you try to find your character, and this is always fun, when you don't know where it's gonna end up, and if you find when exactly you find in something that makes click inside you, and you think like, oh, this is good, and then you continue following the thread. It's like a jigsaw puzzle, and I love that when it's thousand pieces and it, slowly step by step you're creating your own character. It was important, obviously, not to fall into the trap of, mimicking and being like a mere copy, but to make it something, personal. But I think we all managed to do that. I was impressed also by my French colleagues because Yves Saint Laurent had been done twice. So if two other great actors have, played this guy already, I felt kind of more, yeah, unrestrained and free because I thought that was the first series about Karl Lagerfeld. So um, I'm gonna make it mine, my version of it, and hopefully people like it.
Yeah. And Theodore, I have to say, I was like, you get to play the quote unquote fun, especially in those first couple episodes, the fun part of like that ambition that I think really existed in the 70s in whether it be fashion or music or whatever, where it was somebody who really wanted to be part of something and found their
Yeah.
way to do so. When you are playing a character that does have that drive, what is your kind of like thought process as an actor to like figuring out exactly how this person ticks?
What do you mean by ticks? Sorry,
Like how like they're constantly thinking because it is somebody who
oh,
is very ambitious. Like how does it kind of work with you when you're approaching a character like that?
I don't know. I don't know. It's always so, I mean, it's what like kind of what Daniel said, it's I never know where to start to approach because of course that's the end goal, right? When you get to start shooting and you feel like you understand the mind a little bit more and it's not so um but there was, of course, so many reads and so many things that were written about him. And I think that really much of the work was in the writing of Isard and of the writers. I think that they really captured him so and understood him so well and had so much compassion for him to understand that he wasn't just a provocateur and a dandy and a sex addict. He was much more than that. And it wasn't just about ambition to become an icon. It was also the desire to create and to become yeah, so anyway, I don't think it had much to do with me, actually. I think it really was in the writing. And then I think that it was well written because all the research that I did afterwards and all the books that I read that were about him or the books that I read that he read kind of all nourished that idea that the ambition was much more deep and complex than just wanting to be seen. Um, uh, yes, he was someone who had a creative force to him.
Yeah. And I have to ask, not the boring version of this question, I'm gonna ask the fun version of this question. So I love 70s fashion, and I was walking down the street the other day and I saw a girl in bell bottoms as I was wearing like a crochet crop top. And I was like, oh, cool, we're just bringing 70s back in the modern day anyway. But there are still pieces that are very specifically 70s that we don't really ever kind of revisit. when you guys were dressing in the 70s clothes, was there one specific piece that you were like, yeah, I'm glad this one's not making the comeback with the rest of the 70s?
But I mean, they dressed like them, like they were not really following the style of the 70s. They were kind of so dressed in a
Very
specific way,
eccentric, yeah.
so eccentric.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a bit more Jacques, but Karl was out there and that is
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah. But there were some pieces, I mean, these boots, no, these red boots, I thought like, Jesus Christ. And I had to walk down a street in Paris. Sometimes we were, get changed in a hotel, but had to walk a couple of streets to get to the location, And so you would walk, through Paris, actual Paris with real people with these red boots. This was a tough moment for me to wear that with dignity and pride.
So that's when you got picked up.
Nah, yeah.
Yeah.
And then on the last day, Pascaline Chaval, the costume designer, said, "So, what piece do you want to keep?" And I said, "Pascaline, my dear, unless I don't go back to my German hometown where we're celebrating a wild carnival, I cannot keep any any of these pieces because all of them are too much." You had some puts.
I like the pants. I like
Yeah, your
the
style was
yeah,
great.
sometimes, yeah, I could do the pants. I don't know how you say it in English.
Yeah,
Elephant's trunk, pas d'éléphant, like small here and then
yeah, like
big.
Oh, they're like bell bottom, kind of
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
we call
Like
them bell bottom.
well on. Yeah, I love those. I love those.
so it was like 40s style, no 30s or 40s or
70s, no.
70s. But they don't go like they didn't go like this, no? They were more like,
No, they went like this.
yeah.
And then tiny t-shirts that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the 70s here, especially. It was like little crop tops and bell
Yeah, yeah.
bottoms.
And then the rollerblades.
Yeah. And I have to ask Daniel, I know you speak a lot of languages, and so did Carl. So how, I'm assuming that just made it so much easier when you kind of had to jump back and forth, especially there are scenes where it's like French and German back and forth, and then to English within all the same scene.
Yeah. I mean, that's also part of the character because uh, he was so obsessive and so he had so much discipline and so yeah. Then he spoke all these languages, but never lost his funny German accent in the languages. No, also in the German accent, I wanted to sound like someone from Hamburg because if there's four funny Germans, then you would find them in the north. The rest of the country is not that funny. And so they're closer to the English, they have a sense of humor, they're sharp and ironic, and so I wanted to capture that as well. And for some reason, I thought like at the very beginning, I want to do this in Paris and I want to do it in French. I probably would have had real problems if they had told me that they wanted to do the show in German or English, because I knew that, Karl Lagerfeld's home
Mhm.
was actually Paris. That was the culture he loved, French culture, Paris as a city, more than Germany. So it felt right to me that they wanted to do it in France and in French.
Because I was going to ask about that because I'm filming it where it happened is kind of like, I'm obsessed with the lost generation of authors from like the 1920s who went and got lost in Paris. And so it's always fascinating to see history come to life in that city that still represents it. And so filming there, did it just help put you guys instantly in the mindset of what was going on in fashion in that era?
I mean, yeah, yeah, for sure. I don't think it could have been shot anywhere else because there is, of course, like everywhere, but especially in Paris, there's such an energy to it and such it's also very dense. It's also like the beauty of it and the grittiness of it, I think you can't really replicate. And so, yeah, I think it's essential to being in the space and being in the accent as well, and the language around us and yeah, being part of the culture is it really does give us a lot that then we don't have to try to create because it's just there around us.
And also because it hasn't faded in Paris. So they're
Mhm.
still very chic and cool and elegant. So that also helped to be constantly in that vibe of beauty. And that is so special about Paris. I mean, yesterday, the after party was in the Les Bains. I'd never been there before, but it was an iconic place. One of those that still, is there and got renovated. And it was such a cool place, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We went down to the dance floor and then there was a DJ was playing, music of the 70s and 80s. And then they had found some guys, some, people dressing up in these 70s clothes, and it was incredibly cool. It wasn't forced or embarrassing or like, oh, now they're trying hard to, make a fun party. No, they just do it. They just know how to do it. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah, I loved the show. I really tried to test my French from high school and college. It didn't go that well, but I tried real hard to like just watch it and understand what was going on. But thank you guys for talking with me. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait for everyone to get to see the show.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
guys.